Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. This is going to be a short community lesson learned video. Um, we had a great example on this release of the community overall assuming specific weapons were shit. Going to be real simple. I know YouTube doesn't like cussing in the first 30 seconds, but whatever. We had the Scana incarnon, viewed widely as the worst uh, thing to select for your incarnon adapter. I did the Bratton and the Scana. Just wanted to test it out. The Scana ended up paying massive dividends because it's currently bugged. By the way, if you have a Scana that has the incarnon, go ahead and get your Prisma Scana leveled up. Get that puppy applied, and congratulations, that's your new stat stick. But the Sun and the Moon is getting a horrendously bad rap right now. And it's kind of hilarious because the weapon, I've said it before, but use the weapon for its intended purpose. The weapon is basically customized for circuit, right? It's also a really, really solid Nubro weapon. It's not supposed to beat out the Nakana Prime, but the fact is with the right build, and there's a reason the rivens for this thing are going for 1,000 plat right now. This is 3 days after it released, by the way, for future viewers. The issue is the heavy attack. People are saying that the weapon is garbage because there aren't a lot of force procs. The stance has a ton. The stance literally has a dual headshot part and like the standing auto. I don't know what more else you could ask for, and the block forward auto combo is a blast. It has a bunch of multi hit in it because you're swinging around two swords. In the standing, like when you're standing still auto combo, um, yeah, it does seem a little weak, but if you combine it with the block forward, the weapon is just fun, incredibly mobile. It's one of the few weapons. I can't think of another one. I'm assuming there is another one where you actually get the stance for it upon completing the quest, because it's like even the Hespar didn't come with its own stance. You had to farm that, and it was a massive pain in the ass. I remember I got lucky with two rolls, or two drops of it for round reward, and I literally was able to sell the Hespar stance for 50p the day the Zerman came out. So I think the Hespar had its stance in the bundle, but you couldn't buy the Sun and the Moon in like a bundle. But the Hespar, I think, had it in the supporter pack, right? But upon completing the quest, you do get the stance for it. And the weapon is just a fantastic Nubro weapon. Low impact, has puncture and slash. So it's flexible. You can still do a slash build. Has a decent amount of multi-hit. Nothing crazy like a Tonfa stance. The crit chance, status chance, crit multiplier are all usable. The thing that I think the community is missing in terms of its damage is they're not really putting a lot of weight into the heavy attack. It's a 3 times hit. It gets the 12x bonus and the heavy multipliers added onto it. And it's a monster. It is the reason why you're seeing heavy attack oriented rivens right now for this, going for thousands. It's a monster. But I think this release hopefully will be used as a lesson that the community as a whole doesn't know what the hell it's talking about. Like, it's sort of a joke, but like, I think this is a case of just Warframe brain. You know, oh, it doesn't have a 40% crit chance. It doesn't have a 3x crit multiplier. It doesn't have, 26% status chance. It isn't 95% slash weighted. It's like, well, yeah, but you take the Nakana Prime and take it up against Corpus, and you have to make it work. But you take it up against Grineer, and it's a god tier weapon. But if you take it up against the Corpus, you got a mod for Toxin, and all of a sudden that slash weighting isn't doing you any favors. You'd want impact with a heavy slash, or with you would want impact with a heavy status chance, and then you would want to be able to put the Prime Toxin mod on it. So just word of warning, because I'm seeing the Sun and the Moon get a ton of garbage, and it is a wonderful weapon for new bros, and it does incredibly well in the circuit, especially where mobility counts. You can fly around the map. I was able to get it. It was with a, what did I have? I think it was like a Citrine, but we had a Wisp on the team. Man, I didn't have to walk anywhere. You just zip around the map. So it is an incredibly mobile stance. It has a little bit of everything in it. But like even the other weapons, I think hopefully this is used as a lesson, because like the Cinta, right, the new bow, once people figured out how to build it, they're like, oh, it's heat only on the perfect shot, and then people realized, oh, it's a gas build. You can even do gas electric hunter munitions, and the weapon destroys, right? So as soon as people figured out what the hell was going on with it, the Rivens went from like 150, and now they're like 600. And it's because the community learned the weapon didn't change. The weapon's been out for 3 days. So the community learned how to mod for it. And all of a sudden, anybody who knew how to build got a hell of a deal. Now, the Sun and the Moon Rivens, on the other hand, have always run a premium because people figured out pretty quickly. But like, I just checked the YouTube comments, or the YouTube videos, the Reddit posts about it. People still think this weapon's shit. Now, the people who buy Rivens and trade Rivens figured out really quickly they're not going to need the help the community is going to need with this. But the Sun and the Moon is a fantastic weapon. It's not necessarily relevant to whatever content you want to do. But I think this might actually be like a decent lesson. A lot of new people played this expansion, the Daviri Paradox. So where these weapons have like unique traits where it should stick out like a sore thumb, they're not going to recognize it. So I think it's like one of those echo chamber things. Anybody who's played Warframe for a while, especially people on YouTube, they tend to be decently educated. I know my group that watches my videos, my regulars, are all reasonably educated on the game. I haven't seen too many people with just like wrong takes, right? Where it's like not talking too much shit about it, but like a Reddit user, right? They're very aware of how to mod, and like if it's like a new interaction, they immediately incorporate it. Like they're aware of how to change and adapt, right? But if you were paying attention to the weapons, you could have made a steal on Cinta Rivens. Like when I checked 2 days ago, like the weapon doesn't need a Riven, okay, especially with the dispo. And when I looked at it, I was like, wow, that weapon is seriously the rivens for that are seriously underpriced. Um, but the dispo's so low, I'm not gonna bother. I'll get one in like 6 months when the dispo changes, right? But once people figured out that it's multiplicative, like, and you can get millions out of it, all of a sudden the rivens spike, and it's like, well, they're not going to help you that much now. So it is what it is. But hopefully everybody learned a lesson. I know I did a little bit. I kind of lucked out getting the Scana incarnon. That was pure luck. I had planned on it, but obviously I didn't know about the stat stick interaction and how it basically any frame with a pseudo exalted is fucking busted right now. Like instantly, if you got that weapon, like it's not even close. Like even Atlas is applying statuses, right? So it's one of those things, you know. It's exciting. It freshens things up. I hope it's intentional, as busted as it is, because it would give a huge amount of power to veteran players. Like, and I've heard plenty of veteran players complain about this expansion, but the fact is if you do the Daviri experience and farm it and get your adapters, every pseudo exalted frame is level cap capable way easier and without rivens. Like there's nothing to buff. The incarnon on the so I hope the Prisma Scana buff was intentional, because if you know how to mod and you're aware of that and that stays in the game for whatever reason, it's just going to be the default stat stick, even over everything else. Like say, like the Inadem, incredibly high Riven dispos, like the Amphis has been like one of the gold standard go-to stat sticks. The fact is that the Prisma Scana is like several tiers above these weapons. It's not even close. And so we'll see about that. But yeah, no, I just wanted to say like, hey, lesson learned. Um, even on things like the kunai, I was surprised at the damage that did when I looked at those stats. It was like, oh, okay, like it's gonna be really strong for sure. But I forgot about the Saren setup with the explosive rounds or combustible rounds. I forget what it is, but the one where it makes it explode and Toxin Lash applies twice. It's insane also. So there has been probably the single biggest power creep. It's not even like a creep, this is a lurch. And in terms of like getting power onto your frame, if you know how to mod, it is a gold rush right now for getting power onto something. So hopefully when you pick your incarnons, you did a variety and you try to get a variety so you're not picking like pure primaries. Try to get like a melee, try to get a primary and a secondary. So I did a primary and melee this week. Next week I'll do a secondary and something else. Obviously we'll see if the Scana stays in its current condition. But we'll see how it goes. Because the secondary I think is the Furus. But the wiki lists the Dex Furus as of right now as getting an Incarnon adapter. And I hope that's not the case, because that is going to be a meme and a half. Because the Dex Furus can do level cap now. Like, it requires a Riven to really get the damage up, but God forbid you do like a Saren setup. That is an easy weapon to cap with. You don't even need insane strength on it. Obviously against Corpus though, right? But like a Heat Inherit build or like a viral setup, you can get juicy damage out of that. And especially with the bullet hose, you might as well just kill them with the weight of the bullets, right? So, if anyway, this is a big lesson learned as far as I'm considered. Short little rant, right? The the weapons came off as way weaker. Obviously, everybody was excited about the incarnon adapters. Then, obviously, an expansion of anything. It's new content in Warframe. We've been dying here. And the community decided, for whatever reason, let me pull up. Where is it at? I am 18. Steam got review bombed a bit. People are salty. People are legitimately mad because their version of Warframe isn't what got the update. Obviously, the bugs. I mean, listen, if you've played Warframe for a minute, you know there's bugs. They'll get patched out, but it's kind of rules of the road of like a free to play game nowadays. Even though Warframe was one of the originators, or at least the game that popularized free to play. Not even joking. Guy mad about getting suspended, but people are legitimately mad because the Daviri paradox wasn't what they wanted it to be, and compared to what their expectations are, and I think that sort of tainted the community a little bit. And it was like the older players, so I don't know. I really don't have too much of a point, but lesson learned. Watch who you take advice from is what I could say. If you have a trusted builder that you're willing to take recommendations from, or at least, like I don't have anybody that I like innately trust with builds anymore, but I do have a couple of people that I would consider like a really, really good start and a really good idea of what direction to go with the build. So don't listen to randoms. Don't listen to people with high MR, tons of hours in the game, because they might not know what the fuck they're talking about. Okay, and that's just the truth of the matter. They might look at the stats on something. They might not know if it has like multi-hit or something like that, and look at something like the sun and moon and just go, oh, it's shit. It's not shit. Okay, like it's great for the circuit. It is wonderful for the circuit. Yes, there's stuff that does better, like with a Riven setup. Like I had a Cronin Prime run that was pretty nasty with a melee build. But for a starter player, they're basically giving them a weapon that allows them to run the star chart with it, first off. They have access to primary arcane adapters. So don't ever buy a primary arcane adapter from Teshin anymore, because that costs Steel Essence. And the resource for the primary arcane adapters, now we don't know if it rotates yet. It probably will, and go between like primary and secondary. So just as you play a little bit of Daviri, pick up some resources. Like every couple of weeks, you could just do like a fun run in the Daviri experience, and pick up enough resources for like a month for what that costs. It was whatever the blue fruit is. I forget what it's called, but it's like 60. And it's like a heavily farmable one. If you know where to look. It's so the idea of like arcane adapters needing Steel Essence, it is a wonderful new player experience, and if you look at the sun and the moon at a minimum through that as like a new player weapon, it's the most broken weapon in the game. Because think about it, if a player goes through the normal starting starting missions, they're getting the Mark 1 bow. Okay. They're getting the Scana. They're getting the Mark 1 Paris. The Mark 1 Paris doesn't count. That can level cap. They're getting the regular kunai. And they don't have Sarens, so it's like base damage, right? Or if they go through the Daviri experience, they have something that can do Steel Path right off the bat. And they can get comfortably through the star chart with it. That you can do Steel Path with it. I've done about an hour run with it. It's perfectly fine. Obviously slash build against Grenier, right? Use its strengths. But even the base damage on it is decent. Obviously, it's not compared to like a hammer, right? But a 190 is usable. You can go corrosive and do really, really well against Grenier. I've tried Toxin against Corpus. It's perfectly fine. And even like Toxin slash on like a hybrid setup against Corrupted, doing the conjunction survival, and it's perfectly fine. So it for a new player, it will get them through the entirety of the content. It will be something safe to put your Forma into, which is an incredibly limited resource for new players. They could drop 5 Forma into that and be perfectly fine, and everything else they touch would be MR fodder for a long time. So I don't see any issue with it. The weapon isn't shit. It isn't your min-maxed. I do 100 million slash tick Riven setup. But it can do cap. There are already people that have done cap with it, especially with heavy attack builds. Nothing wrong with that. Especially because that heavy attack multiplier applies to 3 hits. If you can get the slash ticks on it, it's pretty nasty. So hopefully this is a lesson learned for everybody, because the community kind of got memed on. Like, the people who were running Rivens and were aware of what happened, I was hearing people talk about it. They're like, the hell's going on with the Santa? And they just started buying up Rivens. Like, they were throwing out, not like God rolls or anything like that. Like, it wasn't that serious. But they were throwing out some pretty decent rolls that they had been, like, hoping to sell in exchange for picking up, like, Santa and Sun and Moon Rivens, because they were so underpriced, and they just bought them up. And they're sitting on a couple thousand plat for their efforts. So the fact is the community kind of got schooled by the veteran players. And for the people who weren't paying attention, or maybe had like a trusted builder that got it wrong, they kind of missed out. You could have, if you had evaluated the weapon correctly, or maybe built it fast enough, you could have gotten away with the steal. Now, neither one of these weapons really need Rivens. The Sun and Moon, if you wanted to go like a quick attack, I think it's Puncture is what it's evenly weighted with Slash, right? Hold on. Yeah, or it's not evenly weighted with Puncture Slash, but you would want like a negative Puncture roll. God forbid you unveil this. I would sell it seriously, even though I'm like sort of hyping this up a little bit. The fact is the correct answer is right now is to sell the damn thing. Buy it back later. But 190 base, he's got triple hit, heavy attack. Slam radius is even 9. Follow through is 0.6. That's pretty standard. A lot of the weapons nowadays, that seems to be what it is. We're probably not getting any more Enodems that are like 0.9, right? But the fact is the weapon is incredibly solid for what it is. So people talking shit about it, listen. I've seen lots of people talk shit about this weapon, and the fact is it's just perfectly okay. Okay, like, you're not building it right. Obviously, it's a build problem. But anyway, PSA over. Don't always listen to the community, because the community consensus on this was wrong. Make your own judgments. If you have a builder that you trust, the fact is I'll tell you right now, everything is viable. There's a cost associated with that. Like some things are more viable than others, but you can throw enough Forma at anything to get it to level cap. Okay? You can get anything to level cap. There are YouTubers where they got their like notoriety the first time on doing like Mark 1 weapons. What was it? Dystopia did like a Mark 1 Bratton. I mean, he's known for heat and hair, but like he also did a Mark 1 Bratton to level cap. Now it was Corpus, he used Saren, it was a good combo. But it still did level cap. So the community a lot of times consensus, unless it's like somebody that you know is like a trusted builder to you, the always answer is even if the weapon sucks, you can just throw enough Forma at it to get it to work properly. The main difference is going to be like, say, a Nakana Prime versus the Sun and the Moon. You could probably do level cap with a Nakana Prime with like 3 mods, where the Sun and the Moon would kind of need their entire mod setup. So that's basically what the issue is. So PSA, maybe they'll fix the stance, and that's probably the issue. Honestly, now that I think about it, that's probably the issue, is the stance doesn't have... If it's got forced procs on the main combos, it's got to be like 1. And I think that's the issue with it. The weapon is fine, but as soon as they fix it, like the Hespar got fixed, and now it's pretty popular because they fixed the stance. So then we obviously got the Chorophel, and the stance didn't fucking matter, right? So once the stance gets fixed, the Sun and the Moon will get its damage multiplied. So the fact is it's the stance. It's clearly what it is. There are other weapons that have the same status, crit chance, and crit multiplier as the Sun and the Moon, and they perform way better. It's because they have a stance that's working properly. So it is what it is. They'll probably fix the stance, and hopefully they'll put like a forced impact, forced slash on there. And that will, unlock Super Saiyan mode, or however you want to say it. But anyway, rant over. Trust yourself, learn how to build, and maybe find a couple people that you don't necessarily always agree with, and don't expect you to agree with them. Like personally, I find myself referencing as like a good starting point, like an Arthas build or Cryogenian WF for like really good starting builds. And then I will tune what I want the weapon to do off their build, because they do level cap runs. Like you ideally you would look for a level cap run associated with the weapon to see what the quote unquote correct build is. And the builds are kind of similar, like because there are specific things you need to take into account. Like not everything is as busted as the Bratton right now. But the fact is and I'm not trying to be mean about it, but very few of the popular creators are like, have like a positive view of level caps. Like, what is it? Dystopia does level caps. Asian Invasions does level caps. Arthas does level caps. Cryogenian does level caps. Gaz does level caps. These guys are people where you could reference a build, and at least at a minimum have a really good starting point. And if you like survivals, even Warframe grind, because Asian Invasion, Arthas, Cryogenian, and Dystopia do disruption caps. Even Warframe Grind for survivals has really good setups. Like I've swapped over a lot of my builds for the Harrow Helminth to get shields back. It makes shield gating a breeze. Or gaining shields and staying alive because it's so spammable. He was completely right about it. So the fact is there aren't too many people that do defense caps. They're frustrating for a reason. There's a reason why people are doing disruption caps. But the fact is like there are people that have like certified builds, and they're certified because of their history. So I would say go with that. Don't trust a Redditor. And unless it's like a clanmate that is literally making their own builds, and I think that's another thing. I know I said I was going to end the video. I'm almost done. It's one of those things where you have like a honer versus an innovator. They're two different types of players. For me, some of these stats or some of these weapons were really easy to spot. It's because I test. Now, I'm not going to catch all of them every time. But most of these weapons, seeing what their potential is, was a lot easier for me than somebody that is trying to min-max a build and play the game really well. It's a different point of view where I could make a build, but the other person, the honer, could play my build better. And that's just the way it is, right? So a lot of the people that are like following like somebody else's build are trying to play it better. They're trying to, as Warframe Grind says, they're trying to outplay their own build. They just got good at outplaying a build. And as mean as it is, until those players gain the troubleshooting knowledge and like the game experience, and understanding of the game, you just need to be impressed with how well they play the game. But if they don't understand the game, they can just play it really well, acknowledge them for what they can do, but they can't do that. And I think that's one of the things that's an issue, is a lot of people are using like preset community builds that have been okayed and not actually testing themselves, because sometimes the community gets it wrong, and we had a lot of weapons this time that the community straight up fucked up on. And if you were paying attention, you could have made some plat. So, like even Sun and Moon, like the first Riven that I saw for that was like 500p. Now the minimum price for a Sun and Moon Riven is 1k. Right? Like there are people figured the weapon out, and once they did, all of a sudden, boom, the builders that are free to play got their hands on it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I know what this is, and fixed it. So there's always, if you get good at spotting weapons, word to the streets, if you get really good at spotting what the builds are, you can sometimes beat sort of the taste makers of Warframe, where a lot of people view their opinions highly. And it's like, say, like somebody makes a video on something. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but like I've noticed that I've started having an effect. Because the information will get parroted, and then it will hit somebody that's like a social butterfly, like a hyperconnector, and then the information spreads really fast after that. So it's not me, it's just because I'm coming up with the stuff. If I say something that's really right, I'll notice the information pretty quickly within like a day or two after I post. So the issue is that there's always that lag between somebody having to come up with something and the community finding out about it. If somebody doesn't make a video, the community basically isn't aware, because everybody rushes to a YouTube video nowadays, or an overframe build, where there's no overframe builds for a weapon that doesn't exist yet. And then you have like theory crafting YouTube videos, which depending on who you are, they might do good, they might do not do good. Um, but the fact is that if you can get good at seeing builds for new weapons and seeing how it's going to work out, that could be your hustle in Warframe, because this expansion was the gold standard of, if you had plat sitting around, you could have flipped a shit ton of rivens before the community knew what was going on. Because in trade chat, I saw people selling Sun and Moon rivens for 400p the day it came out, because everybody thought the weapon sucked, so it was getting the 400p new weapon premium. And now, because the people did the quest, they got the 1 day build time. Now that they have it, and the free-to-play builders got it, and they started making videos on it and like Reddit posts, all of a sudden everybody realizes what it is. The community's IQ went up because a couple of people mentioned it. The Sun and the Moon's fine. Anyway, if you get good at doing builds and picking it out, I still don't think the Santa needs a Riven. I understand you could have made some plat. I don't think it needs a Riven. So forget those guys. Also, the Sun and the Moon. They're perfectly fine as is, though. The Sun and the Moon for a heavy attack build, because you do need the slash mod on it right now, could heavily benefit from a Riven with negative puncture and a standard heavy attack Riven. And it would help it out a lot getting those slash procs onto the heavies. So it is what it is. Anyway, rant over, guys. Take it easy.